Hi, everyone. Welcome to Breaking the Silence, a podcast produced by Angels Protection Inc., where we amplify the voices that challenge inequity, strengthen institutions, and expand opportunity across industries and communities. I'm your host, Makaila Davis, founder and chairwoman of Angels Protection Inc. And in today's episode is a part of our Men of Impact series, where we spotlight executive leaders across fields corporate, nonprofit, government, academia, faith, entrepreneurship, and beyond, who are building systems, leading teams, and shaping culture with integrity and accountability. This series exists because leadership matters, because influence carries responsibility, and because executive power must be aligned with purpose. This conversation is more than titles. It's about stewardship, it's about access, it's about legacy, and it's about what it truly means to lead in a way that transforms people, not just profits. And today's guest embodies that truth. Reverend Michael Robinson is a bivocational pastor, workforce strategist, higher education leader, and community architect whose career bridges faith, corporate leadership, education, and economic development. He currently serves as associate pastor of Monumental Baptist Church under the leadership of Reverend Dr. J. Wendell Mapson Jr., while also leading large-scale workforce and community initiatives across the city of Philadelphia. Over the course of his career, Reverend Robinson has held executive and senior leadership roles, including Director of Community Outreach and Hiring at Temple University, Recruiting Manager at Delante, Director of Trio Upward Bound at Swarthmore College, Director of the Center of Male Engagement at Community College of Philadelphia, and Adjunct Professor at Eastern University and Temple University's Fox School of Business. For more than a decade, he has produced Philadelphia's largest annual citywide job fair and workforce initiative that has connected thousands of residents to employment opportunities in America's sixth largest city. His work has earned statewide and citywide recognition, including the Workforce and Economic Trailblazer Award and appointments to the Governor's Advisory Commission on African American Affairs, which is huge. Ordained in 2013, Reverend Robinson also served as senior pastor of Greater Enon Missionary Baptist Church for over a decade. His ministry extends beyond the pulpit, offering confidential premarital and marriage counseling, mentorship, and community empowerment initiatives. He's a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated, embodying its principles of achievement, service, and leadership in both professional and community spaces. What sets Reverend Robinson apart is his ability to integrate faith, workforce strategy, higher education, access, and brotherhood into one cohesive mission, building pathways where none previously existed. So I just want to take the time to welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you so much. And I need to pay you to be my publicist.
Yeah.
I was like,
I'm
who
like,
is
that is you. That is
like,
you, the man that's doing amazing work in the community.
I want to meet that guy.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to start off by asking you, what first called you into ministry and how has that calling shaped your leadership beyond the church?
Growing up, as in many Black households, especially in my era, I'm 65. So when I was much younger as a kid growing up, the thing that families did back then was on a Sunday, everybody was in church. You had no option. If you were a kid, you were in church. In fact, when I was a kid growing up, everything on Sunday, in terms of stores and supermarkets and all of those kinds of things, everything was shut down. There was nothing open on a Sunday. And so what families did back then, the community, went to church, whether you were the thug on the corner or whether you were, a professional or factory worker or office worker, everybody went to church. So I think that was planted in me from a young age. And then as I grew, I did depart from that. I did depart from that, church going habit that was built up over the years as a child being taken to church. But I returned. The Bible speaks about how, a child may depart from the whole, experience, but they return. And so that is a truism for me. And I'm glad I returned because if not, I'm sure my fate would either be, dead in jail or certainly, out on the streets, desolate and, broke down. So I thank God for what my mother did in forcing us to go to church on Sunday because that certainly planted a great seed that germinated very well over the years.
It did, and now you're in leadership within the church.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who would have thunk it?
Right.
This
Right.
project came from the Bennett Home Housing Development in Chester, Pennsylvania, who used to hug the block and, were into shenanigans, who's now, ordained clergy. I certainly didn't see that for myself.
No, but I love that. And now being able to bring people to God and to Christ, it's so important and critical, especially in times like this. Um, so I always wanted to ask too, how do you balance being a bivocational pastor while leading large-scale workforce initiatives?
It's At first it was very difficult, and I was very resistant to that because I always admired pastors that were full time, fully devoted to the ministry. Because I saw that model of being a pastor as being laser focused. You don't have the distraction of having to work. You're fully on, full time, devoted to the ministry. But as time went on, I really embraced and I really believe that, for me at least, the bivocational model works best because um, I've seen in certain situations where when there's animus between a pastor and the church, where a pastor can lose their livelihood because maybe they've been voted out or, for whatever reason, the church no longer wants that person, as their senior pastor. And I don't want to put myself in a position where I'm, you know, in that kind of circumstance. And I thank God that I've had a great 11-year experience being the senior pastor, left on good terms. But I embraced my bivocational experience as time went on. And it allowed me to even give more financially to the ministry. And then because of my pastoral role in my secular role working at Temple University in an executive capacity, it opened up greater opportunities for Temple to have better relationship with a broader Philadelphia community through, pastoral associations, clergy associations, and so that benefited Temple. Um, and so I thank God that I made the decision to, remain bivocational because it had some great advantages for not only my employer, Temple University, but also for the ministry accessing some of the resources that Temple had, that our church benefited from when we would present major community events and partner with Temple. And so it was a symbiotic relationship that worked well, and I embraced it over the years.
No, I love that, especially how you touched on like the many different organizations that you're a part of to kind of help you through that journey. Um, and also, too, I wanted to ask, you produced the largest annual citywide job fair in Philadelphia. So, what gaps were you trying to fill when you started that initiative?
When I started back in 2011 here at Temple University, I didn't become a senior pastor until 2013. That's a sidebar note. But when I came on board in 2011, there was something interesting happening. Um, I picked up the job fair momentum from my predecessor when I came on board that year in 2011. And in that year, um, there was about a 15, close to 16% unemployment rate nationally among the African American community. Now, when we were in COVID times, you saw it hovering around 10, 12%, somewhere maybe between 10, 12, 13%. And we felt that pinch. The African American community felt that economic pinch when there was, high spiking unemployment across the board for everybody, but especially for us as people of color. So imagine what 16, 17% unemployment looks like. You can relate as a young leader. what that looked like back in the pandemic time. But imagine it being, several points higher than that. And so when I came on board, there was a great need here in the Philadelphia community, especially when Philadelphia has like a 65, 70% um, racial makeup of the city. It was important for us here at Temple University to really look at the unemployment in our community overall, but taking a micro look at who this high unemployment is impacting the most, which is us, the people of color. The job fair was definitely needed, and I'm thankful that my predecessor, William Hart, who started the job fair before I even came on board to Temple, and I just kept the momentum going from 2011 to now. There was a great need then, as it is now, because we're seeing, although we're in single digit unemployment numbers for the African American community, it's starting to ratchet back up. And so we're seeing the need for these mega job fair events that I put on for the city, because it gives people from a cross section of professions, a cross section of industries, to meet with many individuals that are hiring, representing different companies from across the tri-state area that are there actively recruiting. We don't bring an employer in unless they're vetted. And one of the criteria is that they have to come with employment opportunities, whether it's entry level or executive level, or somewhere in between. They have to come with employment opportunities. And our target audience has traditionally been, recent college grads, adult professionals that have been displaced, and veterans and military veterans. So there's a need for this job fair, as it was back when I came on board in 2011, as we see a great need now for the people that we're serving.
No, I love that. Especially when you said that they have to come with employment opportunities, because I think there's a lot of organizations, especially now with AI taking over, with hiring and processes, not knowing if this job is a real job or it's just a job that's posted. Is it really a job that's funded? So it's really important that you guys have that vetting process to bridge that gap. And also, too, what systematic barriers continue to prevent Black men and underserved communities from accessing sustainable employment?
That's a very complex question that requires probably an answer that needs more time than we have today to devote to it. But I'll pick out several factors that are major issues that I've seen over the years. Some of the barriers for our African American community is education and training. The lack of certain education, the lack of certain training for the careers that are in demand for this location of the country. Here in Philadelphia, we are eds, meds, hospitality, and construction driven city. Education, medical, hospitality, that's hotels and restaurants and related businesses, and construction. Those are huge industries in this city. And if you're not aligned with the professions and the skills that are required to keep those major employment sectors that I mentioned running, you're not going to be competitive in Philadelphia. And so I need to throw actually one more in the mix, which is technology. Quiet as it's kept, Philadelphia has emerged nationally as a tech-driven city, as a high-tech city. There's a lot of emerging technology businesses, and here in the Philadelphia area, we have one of the world's largest tech companies here in the city, Comcast. Um, and so the, those major industries that I mentioned require highly educated and highly skilled professionals. So whether I'm blue collar or a white collar professional, I have to have the education that's required to be competitive, and I have to have the certification in terms of my trade skills. And if I'm not a certified trade professional, and if I'm not a degreed individual, and high school educated individuals have a space in this, economy, but the higher demand and the higher paying jobs are for those that are the blue collar trade individuals that have certifications in their trade, and for the white collar workers who have college education that are in demand. And whether that's, a degree in cybersecurity, AI technology, which is really popular now, engineering, um, and business, finance in particular, Delaware, which is right down the road from us, including Philadelphia, is a hub for a lot of major financial institutions. So finance and accounting are big. If you're not, lined up with what your location, your town, your city, your state needs, then you got to, go back to school and get what's in demand, or go where the demand for your skill set is high. And for some people, that may mean I might have to look at going outside of Pennsylvania or outside of Philadelphia to where my particular skills and my particular level of education is in demand. And then I see, former incarcerated individuals experiencing high challenges in the, workforce, because, they're carrying with them the baggage of being formerly incarcerated. And some employers are a little squirmy about hiring somebody with, a criminal background, especially if it was a violent background, or background that, really raises an eyebrow. The hardest people to place are those who've committed arson and any type of sexual assault. They're harder to place than a murderer. And so depending on what crime you've committed, that can make your employment options very challenging. It could create barriers. And so I tell people, as I coach hundreds of individuals over the years who were formerly incarcerated, with how to approach the marketplace in a competitive manner, some of the advice I give them is to have letters of recommendation from powerful individuals, whether that's a state rep or some political person, references from previous work, and also to get references, have some references from the supervisors you work for while you were incarcerated. So that when you come out and you're competing for these jobs, you have this brief portfolio of reference letters and accommodations and certificates of achievement of various accomplishments made over the years that they may have had. And you can present that to an employer and show that you're worthy of the opportunity that you're competing for. And parenthetically speaking, this is an untapped talent pool. You have people who are highly motivated because they already realize a lot of people don't want to give them a shot. And oftentimes they're bringing to the table some qualified skills that employers are looking for. But because of their incarceration, employers are, missing out on a huge talent pool that they could be tapping into.
No, I appreciate that, especially when you touched on that it's an untapped market. And I think employers do need to just look at it a little bit differently when they're hiring. Also, too, but I wanted to touch on you're a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. So how has fraternity membership shaped your leadership journey?
when I pledged, Kappas were running the yard. They were leaders in sports, leaders in student government, leaders across the board in many aspects of campus life. They were, taking the forefront of meeting with, senior level officials on campus for campus-wide student meetings and that kind of thing. And I was like, you know what? If I'm going to pledge something, I'm going to be one of these guys. And so that's what motivated me because I saw such great leadership among the young men that were Kappas that were just doing the darn thing. They were running, many of the aspects of campus life in terms of student leadership organizations, et cetera. And so that appealed to me. And then also they were very committed to outward community service, serving the community, serving the campus community in various volunteer ways. And because of that, that carried over into my professional life where I've always been since graduating from college, undergrad and grad school, since graduating from college. I pledged Kappa in 1979 as an undergrad. And since that time, I have been activated in my community in some sort of leadership role. Some of my current leadership includes a police chaplain. I'm a police chaplain here in Philadelphia. I serve in terms of some youth groups at the church. I'm also, as you mentioned earlier, an associate pastor currently serving at Monumental Baptist Church. I volunteer with educational organizations, professional groups like the Black MBA Association, the National Association of Black Accountants, and other professional groups and community nonprofit agencies that I volunteer my time with so that I give back to the community. The community needs people that are engaged, giving back of their time, talent, and resources. So I'm philanthropic in that way. I give generously of my time, my talent, my treasure, and my testimony in giving back to the community.
I love that, especially when you said time, talent, and resources. I think that's really key. And also, too, how can historically Black fraternities continue to serve as engines of mentorship, economic mobility, and civic responsibility?
So in Kappa Alpha Psi, we have a huge component called our Guide Right program. And our Guide Right program is our national and international youth mentorship program, where we're working with young men in various capacities, whether that's training them up to go to college, whether that's training them for workforce opportunities, whether it's grooming them on how to be valiant, respectable men in the community. Our Guide Right program is a mentorship program where we, as the Kappas, are mentoring young men who are high school aged in the community, as well as those that have graduated from our Guide Right program that are attending college that come back to serve as young adult mentors for the high school students that we work with. And it's not, to groom folks, exclusively for Kappa, because we've had some folks that have gone through our Guide Right program that, went on to not pledge, that went on to maybe pledge other fraternities, but we've had, a number of people who have followed and went on to become Kappas. But the main thing is to groom these young high school age men for success in life in general. And so we're proud of the Guide Right program that has won many awards over the years. And that's how we are engaged as men of achievement, as men of Kappa Alpha Psi, in mentoring and growing young men to be men of distinction, men of achievement in their adulthood.
I love that. And I love how you said it's not just about if they're coming to go through the program to come back to be a Kappa, but it's just about making sure they're being trained up the right way so that they can go out and be successful adults within their communities. And really embody all of the pillars that you guys showcase and showed them throughout that program. And also, too, you served on state and city commissions focused on African American affairs. What policy shifts are most urgent right now?
For me, some of the urgent policies is home ownership, because home ownership is wealth building. That's legacy wealth building for the next generation. You can pass that wealth on when you own land, when you own a house. There's equity in that you can take out and build financially on that. So housing is a big deal for me. Education, access to higher education, and affordable higher education is important to me as policy issues. I also have a heart and compassion for formerly incarcerated individuals. If you've been, off probation and you've had a number of years of no crime since your release, there should be some type of automatic trigger where your record is expunged, as opposed to a person having to go through a tedious process that requires so many hurdles to be jumped. So I think we need to address that,
Mm.
because there are thousands and thousands and thousands of men and women who've been released, who've been, crime-free for a decade or more since their release, and yet, they're haunted by carrying the weight of their criminal record with them anytime they're competing for employment opportunities. I would rather see a system set up, and it may be a complex issue to address, but I would rather see that there's some type of policy where if a person's been released, and let's say I'm just arbitrarily picking 10 years, and they've been crime-free for 10 years since their release, there should be an automatic trigger for their record to be expunged. If it's a 5-year window, a 7-year window, a 10-year threshold, whatever the time frame, policymakers can determine, but I think that should be examined.
I agree. And also, too, what do young men need most from male leaders today?
I think they need to see men of integrity, because right now we see so much dishonesty, misinformation, crooked dealings, criminal behavior. And this is from our current administration. This isn't hyperbole. I'm not trying to, throw shade at somebody, but these are the facts. This is what our young people see, our young men and our young women. They see such criminality and such corruption and immorality and shenanigans going on in the highest office of our land in this current administration. They need to see examples of what it looks like for a strong man who's working hard, whether that's a blue collar worker or a white collar worker. They need strong examples, role models in the community. Like I ride SEPTA a lot. And when I see young men, taking their little kids to childcare in the morning, I compliment those guys, because these are young men that are stepping up to the plate, that, oftentimes get a bad rap. Black men aren't no good. I hate hearing that, because I'm surrounded by so many great Black men that are doing the darn thing, who are white collar professionals, blue collar professionals, who are hard workers. And I'm intentionally mentioning blue collar workers because everybody shines the spotlight on white collar workers. Blue collar workers are professionals too. And they're making a good living. Those people that are in the trades, you have plumbers living next door to surgeons. Mm. So we have to, as the older men, the Bible teaches us that as older men and as older women, we as older men need to train up the younger men on how to be valiant, how to be strong, how to be industrious. The Bible teaches, if a man don't work, he don't eat. And the same for the women. Older women need to model virtue and all the positive aspects that go into being a great woman. a great virtuous woman. They need to model that for the younger so that we have these positive role models that we can look at and say, and touch and feel and say, you know what, I can be that too. I can be that too. I can be a Sister Davis. I can do what she's doing because I see her. I can touch and feel a Miss Davis doing a popular podcast and being a great young role model in the community. And so we need to embrace, more of the integrity, honesty, industrial, type of mentality, being industrious on the job, being productive on the job, being engaged community leaders, being good family men to our families, and doing all of that so that we can model good behavior for the next generation that's following us. Because they're seeing such a mess right now. The chaos in our current administration is just crazy.
It is. And I also wanted to kind of just like end it with what legacy are you intentionally building?
I would I want to be the greatest hero to my family, and I want the world to say when Mike Robinson passes away that here lies a man who was committed to his community. He didn't forget where he came from. He loved on his family. Um, he loved the work that he did and helping, provide economic opportunities for uplift for the community. Um, I want that to be, my legacy, and I pray that, in all humbleness, that I'm on target to achieving such a legacy.
I love that. And I think that's really important too. So I just want to say, Reverend Robinson, thank you so much for your service, your strategic leadership, and your unwavering commitment to building pathways of opportunity in Philadelphia and beyond. Your life reminds us that impact is not accidental, it is structured, it's consistent, and it's rooted in service. You demonstrate that faith and workforce development are not separate lanes. They are interconnected strategies for restoring dignity and expanding access. So, to our listeners, if today's conversation resonated with you, stay connected with Breaking the Silence and Angels Protection, Inc. as we continue elevating men who lead with conviction, courage, and community at the center. And always remember, silence protects systems, not people. So let's keep breaking it together. And thank you so much for being a part of the podcast. Take care, guys.
Take care.